It's time again for another installment of the basics, and I'm glad to see you're all back here for this episode and didn't get assimilated. That's always a high point of anyone's day. And I've been talking a lot about power cards and combos on previous episodes, but the question that everyone always seems to ask me is not so much the power card, but how many of one card you should have in your deck. So on this episode, I'm going to take you through a lot of the power cards that you would normally have in your deck, but I'm going to tell you how many of them you should have in your deck. So let's get started. Now, unlike in Magic the Gathering, where you need quads of a lot of cards for an effective deck, the Star Trek CCG doesn't work that way. In most cases, you're going to have one copy of unique personnel, maybe two copies of universal personnel or universal ship, but there are a lot of power cards and good cards in the game that you need multiple copies in your deck for your deck to be effective. So, getting started, I'm not going to tell you the description of every card because you should know that by now. I'm going to tell you how many you need in your deck and why. The first one being obvious, it's the space-time portal, and I've mentioned this on previous episodes, that it works almost like the alternate universe door, only better. You should have at least two copies of Space-Time Portal or Alternate Universe Door if you're using a deck with a lot of personnel that depend on it. Rescue is self-explanatory. You're going to need help during the game, especially if your opponent is getting rid of a lot of your good cards and killing your personnel. You would need 2 to 3 of these. Kevin Uxbridge Convergence is one of the best power cards. I recommend 2 to 3 of these. Same with Q-Net. 2 to 3 Q-Nets in your deck, you're going to use them. Trust me on that. Countermanda, it nullifies telepathic alien kidnappers, or if they just played Rescue or Palertoff, you're suspending that. So you want to have 2 to 3 of these in your deck. Captain's Log is all dependent on if you have a personnel, a captain, if you will, on your ship that has commanded that ship. And it gives you that instant boost. You would want 2 of these in your deck. You don't want any more than 2, because if you keep pulling these out, your opponent's going to get pissed off and eventually start countering them and doing bad things to you. Red Alert is self-explanatory. You need 3 to 4 of these in a deck. I settle on 3 personally because it's not something I want to keep reaching to if I get into problems, because it can be nullified with Yellow Alert, which you want to have 2 of these as well. Now keep in mind, a lot of these cards I'm showing you, you also want to have them in your side deck, as I've shown you on a previous episode. Auto-Destruct. This is good to have 2 of in your hand, but no more than that, because it does take up space, and the end result of getting into trouble is not always blowing everything up and hoping for the best. Amanda Rogers, you want to have 2 in your deck. It nullifies an interrupt card or any one artifact played as an interrupt, so that can be huge in certain situations. Q2 is a very versatile interrupt, and it does a lot. You want 2 to 3 of these in your deck as well. It could be used as an unexpected interrupt later in the game. You don't want to use it too early. Mutational shields, this would also apply to multiphasic shields. 2 to 3 of these, but 2 is a happy medium, because again, you're going to become predictable if you have more than 2 or 3 of these in your deck. 2 is a happy medium. Kevin Uxbridge, I would say 2, because if you have a lot of Kevin Uxbridge Convergence, 2 to 3 of those, and you don't really need too many of the original Kevin Uxbridge. Anti-Time Anomaly, 1 or 2, because this is kind of a wild card. It's not something you're going to actually think about playing throughout the game. It's something you're going to have left in your hand when things are getting really bad, and you're going to pull it out and try to use it. Alternate Universe Door, as I've mentioned, the same as Space-Time Portal, 2 of each card in your deck. Or if you don't like using one of those doorways, 3 or 4 of the Alternate Universe Doors by itself, although, like I said, I prefer Space-Time Portal because it does more. And finally, a surprising card. It's not a power card, but any outpost, depending on your affiliation, 2 to 3 outposts, and that would be 1 main outpost and 2 secondary, and that could be a station or a neutral outpost as well. It doesn't have to be a affiliation specific, even an unaligned outpost. Now, to determine fully how many of each card or any power card you're going to need in your deck, it's not going to be something you're going to figure out right away. I have developed this over years and years and years of playing this customizable card game, tournaments, friends, whatever, I've come up with different card multiples for different cards. I've even switched it up sometimes, because I remember one game in a tournament where I had 3 red alerts and I had plenty of Kevin Uxbridge and Rescue, and it didn't get me anywhere, and I had to knock down the number of those cards and go with something else that was completely different. So as you play more and as you more so get defeated, that's where you will learn the card multiples better. This is a rough guideline. It's not set in stone. This is just what works for me and a couple of players I've played with over the years. So you got to come up with your own strategies as well. Have a great day, everybody.